I'm Marie Vigourou.
I'm Jeremy Greer.
And this is Rude Eats, a delicious podcast where we sink our teeth into every episode of the show Hannibal.
I want Will Graham, I really do. And I think that we could have some fun. Then you can do anything you like. I might even go and help you catch the Shrike. I want Will Graham, I want that man. For every meal and on demand. His mind shines and his body's cut. I know that he works for the FBI, but what other man has pure empathy and the ability to see my mind? Jack, what other thing have I ever asked you for? Besides, never looking into my pantry? And I won't get that either. Damn. I want Will Graham, I want him so. And he really doesn't need to know. Once in my meals are on my mind, I just want Will Graham to be mine. I want him and I want him now. I said before, I don't care how. I'll give him tests and he'll draw a clock. And then his dark desires I will unlock. We'll be together, Will and me. We'll throw some grand dinner parties. We'll cut the flesh, we'll cook the meat. He'll eat the food just like me. Give me goddamn Will Graham.
Well, Mary. As we get deeper into season 1, I can't tell you how excited I am to hear your reactions to this show. Specifically this episode, where some things are revealed that you have kind of been guessing at for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the first time that I watched this episode, usually I'm like live tweeting to you, right? Like when I watch them, and this time I didn't. And I watched it. I like closed my computer and I just went to bed, and I was like, that's enough. I need like, I think I'm good. Like, that's enough. There's
a meme that goes around Twitter from a guy named Austin Walker, where he tweeted out, "Have you ever seen a take so bad it just makes you immediately want to go to sleep?" And have you ever seen a Hannibal episode that had so much that just makes you immediately want to go to sleep? It's very much so this much. One. I'm so. Like you've been guessing at some of the stuff that's revealed here for a while, and I'm curious, does it feel good to be right?
No, Jeremy, it feels awful. I didn't want to be right about any of this.
Well, why don't you tell everybody what episode we're covering, and then we'll get into it.
All right. Today we are covering Hannibal Season 1, Episode 9, Trou Normand. A totem pole of human bodies ranging from freshly killed to decades old are found on a beach, and while Graham is investigating the crime scene, he suddenly finds himself in Lecter's office, 3.5 hours away, with no recollection of how he got there. That was a very long sentence. My English teacher would have been like, run on.
Run on.
Lecter theorizes that Graham's mind is trying to escape from having to investigate such brutal murders. This episode was directed by Guillermo Navarro, written by Steve Lightfoot, and it originally aired on May 23rd, 2013.
Absolutely. The episode description does a disservice to this episode, which is packed full of character revelations and just a lot of stuff to get into. And it's interesting. Rewatching Hannibal for this podcast has been interesting. The thing that I keep taking away from it is just how like unimportant the monster of the week kind of killer stuff is in the grand scheme of things, like how they just really use it as like a bed to like grow this relationship between all of these different characters. But at the same time, if you asked people this episode specifically with this enormous totem pole of human bodies that we're going to see at the very beginning is one of the most memorable things from the show. So like when you talk to people, like they'll tell you about the kills because they're like so over the top and crazy. But like if you really dig into the episodes from a critical perspective, like you and I are doing, they don't matter at all. Like it's
none of that matters. I like have zero notes about this.
It's so funny. All of the science stuff, like I don't even think I wrote down how they found the killer. And then like the twist with the killer thing, I was just like, yeah, sure, okay, I see what they're doing there, but whatever. It's just so funny that none of this stuff actually matters.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of one of those things where I've noticed so far that the monster of the week is kind of like, it's really created in order to like be a mirror to what's going on with the characters. And like, of course, a lot of those like cases, like case by case, like weekly cases, procedurals are about that, but like Hannibal particularly, like it is only made for that, you know, like it's, and so I'm looking at this particular storyline with that in mind. And I'm like, okay, so what does that say about our characters? Like this particular situation, this particular case, like what does it say about Hannibal, about Abigail, about Will, about Jack, about, you know, everybody?
All of our little weirdos that show up in this episode, including our fave, Freddie Lowndes. We love Freddie.
Oh my God. Anyway. Oh, that last scene. Okay.
I know.
Okay.
We had some difficulty, I think, coming up with a theme for this episode because I did not know what is it Trou Normand? Am I doing that right? I did not know what a Trou Normand was when we started because I am not fancy like that. And then and you'll describe what it is here in a second. But it didn't really. I felt like it didn't really fit the episode because the episode felt real twisty. Like it felt real like gotcha almost. Like you thought this was going to be a thing, but actually it's this. And so I was kind of thinking like, oh, maybe there's something weird in the way this is made, and then that didn't work out. And then you had the suggestion of boundaries, and that's when we kind of like seized on something. And I'll kind of let you explain it from there.
Well, yeah, I think that there could have been a lot of ways to go about this, to be honest, because I was rewatching it after we set ourselves on boundaries, and I was like, oh yeah, we could have done, like, depending on how you look at this episode, there's like a bunch of ways that you can relate it, but they're all like pretty thin, and it's getting harder. Like we actually have to think now in order to like get to stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, thinking what? Okay. So Trou Normand is the title of this episode, and traditionally a Trou Normand is simply like having a shot of Calvados, which is an apple brandy made from the region of Calvados in France. Actually, it's an AOC. I did not know that. I thought that was kind of like a thing, like just a generic thing, but it's not. And so it's basically having a shot of Calvados between dishes in a meal, because people thought that the alcohol would dilate your stomach so that you could then eat more and ignore your hunger cues. And it comes from a very, very old French tradition that like people don't really use anymore, of drinking 3 shots during your meal called le coup d'avant, le coup du milieu, and le coup d'après. Meaning literally the before shot, the middle shot, and the after shot. And the Trou Normand was that middle shot, so to speak, basically, to make it so that even though you were probably not hungry anymore, you could eat more after having it. Today, though, people will usually have like apple sorbet with Calvados, and that's your modern Trou Normand. With that in mind, we figured that a good theme for this episode, like you said, would be boundaries or limits, particularly ignoring or stretching those boundaries or those limits. Because like if a Trou Normand is meant to make you stretch your stomach and ignore the limits of your appetite, this episode shows a lot of ignoring boundaries and stretching limits.
Sure does. I was rewatching the episode last night with Autumn, and she pointed out too a thing that I've started doing since you and I are making notes and we're kind of watching each episode twice is sharing our theme with Autumn, so that when we rewatch it, her and I can talk about it. Autumn becoming like the ghost host of this podcast.
I know, right?
And she pointed out that like this could also be used as almost a palate cleanser in some cases, as a way for a lot of these characters to having expressed everything that they've been hiding. Not everything, but like to get stuff off their chest and to kind of reset the table almost, right? Like to kind of like lay out a different course essentially before the next meal, before the next food begins, before the next meal begins.
Dish, right? Yeah. Well, you know what's really funny is that when I rewatched it, I was like, oh man, this could be about like things coming to light, because like trou is hole, right? So like things coming out of the hole, literally things are coming out of holes.
Yeah, holes in people's knowledge, or holes in the ground that hide corpses, or any number of things.
Exactly. And so I'm like, I completely agree with Autumn that like this is definitely like a palate cleanser, like a leveling of a lot of things, right? Like,
and it's exciting too. I think that there's quite a bit we learn about the characters on here. Obviously, like the stuff with Abigail is finally confirmed. Like we finally know what the secret she's been having. Having Hannibal be honest with Will when the time comes, I think is almost shocking because it's so casual. And seeing the unfortunate side effect of Jack be just absolutely brutal and crossing boundaries with Abigail, but also be correct, is just really difficult to watch. So it's going to be fun as we go through our episode to actually kind of apply these different themes that we've been talking about to each of these characters.
I was so mad that Jack was right, by the way. Like, actually mad. I was like, no! No!
Our mutual friend Mike sent me like a 3-minute voicemail the other day. And it was just like, he was just like, I'm having a hard time remembering a time where Jack was wrong. And I was like, oh no. And I'm not sure if he was just talking about the first season or the whole show, or I'm not sure where he is in his rewatch, but it was just fun to get that and to have you DM me like a couple of weeks later and be like, I hate that Jack is right. This is
yes, exactly. Like, I really hate that he was right about this.
Do you have any last kind of comments on our theme before we jump into our beat by eat section?
Just that I'm very excited to get to the beat by eat, because there's so much I want to talk about.
Yeah, I'm excited to finish this podcast so that you can DM me about episode 10, because you're going to lose your mind. So,
oh no.
Let's get into it. We're going to start with Jack and Will, who are on a beach in West Virginia, and they're at the scene of a grotesque display. This is a literal totem of bodies. Our ERT group are kind of making jokes about this being a puzzle, about puzzle pieces needing corners, corners being the heads. Beverly says, we have too many corners, 7 grades, and way too many heads. There are literal graves dug up around this. So whoever did this planted bodies, came back, pulled the bodies out of the ground, combined them with other bodies, and then built this, like I said, grotesque, beautiful display of bodies.
Mm-hmm. And Jeremy, no matter how accurate your description is, like, it is nowhere near what it actually looks like. Like, there's no way that I could have imagined what that thing really looked like if somebody had just described it to me. So I don't know. I just needed to say that. And I also have just a little comment that I want to get out of the way, just because that is just who I am. But like, totem poles are an indigenous tradition of the peoples of what we call today the Pacific Northwest of the US, but as well as British Columbia and Canada. And totem poles are basically meant to commemorate like stories, families, and ancestors. So like, this is a TV show, like, their job is not to educate us, but I'm definitely not wanting to kind of fall within like the white savior trope here, but I did cringe a little bit when I saw this like super meaningful indigenous custom being used for like aesthetics on a murder show without any kind of context. So just do it that way you will.
I think
there you go. It's out of the way.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention that because it's, something that's not really used correctly in the grand scheme of things, right? All of these corpses look like they're old, except for the one at the very top. And Jack says something about these graves being desecrated, and Will corrects him. These graves weren't desecrated; they were exposed. And it's time for time for Will to do his thing. So the pendulum starts, the scene rewinds. Will kind of wakes up. And he describes himself, kind of narrates himself as we've seen him do. Like, I've planned this monument with precision, collected all of my raw materials in advance. I did a little happy dance when he said raw materials, having put together the raw materials thing in the last episode between Tobias and Hannibal collecting raw materials for their passion. And I was like, no. So the show just underlined that for me. Thank you, show. That helps a lot.
It's like they're going to do something awful with that. Thanks.
It's becoming more difficult, I think, to watch Will reenact these murders, and I think that's very specifically done as we watch like him positioning the bodies, like tying these bodies up in a specific shape with like rope and rebar, right? And I think it's difficult for us to watch, and it's obviously difficult for Will to do, as we're going to find out over the course of the episode. And his last victim is tied up on the beach. He's not dead yet. And Will says, this is my design. I wanted him to know my design. And he walks over and he stabs the dude in the chest. And we see the guy die as blood pools below. And we get this incredibly slow pan up of this grotesque totem starting from the bottom going all the way to the top, where you can just see how much detail, how much care went into this display of corpses tied up and butchered. And it's the show is reveling in it, right? Like, they obviously spent a lot of time working on this. Like, they wanted to shock and awe you. And I think when you ask people about Hannibal, this is one of the most memorable things about the show. And this is one of the things that I keep coming back to, because it's also one of the least important things in Hannibal if you talk about the show. But it's one of the most memorable things. And I find that just fascinating.
You know how last week we were talking about how I would probably have like a grossed out reaction to something really benign?
Yes.
Like, that I was fine with somebody playing a human being, but like, I hated this totem pole so much. I was so grossed out by it in so many ways, and I was like, this is it. This is my point. I hate this.
It gets worse. Just as a warning, it's going to get worse than this.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Will says that this is his resume. This is my body of work. This is my legacy. And he wakes up. And instead of being at the beach, he's at Hannibal's office, very confused. And Hannibal comes out to meet him and was not expecting Will to be here. And obviously Will is freaking out right now. And Hannibal is very calm. He says that Will is disassociating, that he's hiding from the abuse that he's putting himself through, that Jack is forcing him to look at these bodies, forcing him to use his, quote, empathy disorder. And it's basically amounts to abuse, even if he's abusing himself. And Will rejects this. He goes, no, I'm saving lives. And Hannibal says, well, what about your life? I don't care about the lives you save. I care about your life, and your life is separating from reality. At this point, Will admits to sleepwalking and hallucinating, which is...
And it's the first time he does that, right?
Yeah, this is the first time I think he's told anybody. And he's like, maybe I should get my brain scanned. And Hannibal is like, Will, no, stop looking at in the wrong corners for your answers. And this is so telling, dude. This is Hannibal giving away himself so badly.
Listen, so you and I had a DM conversation about this, because one thing that I've written about in my academic career is called testimonial injustice in medicine. So it's this idea that doctors don't always listen to their patients because of the unconscious bias that they have against different aspects of their patient's identity. So I'm particularly interested in moments when doctors dismiss the concerns of patients who are young women who are disabled, particularly by chronic pain. And so all of my red flags came up when Will said, I think there's something wrong with me. I want a brain scan. And Hannibal was like, nah, this is a psychiatric problem. Big fuck you, Hannibal, because I can excuse cannibalism, but I draw the line at medical gaslighting. Will has insurance, right? Get him a brain scan. You've got a man who's hallucinating. A brain scan isn't actually a crazy request. It's a completely valid one. And if the MRI comes back clean, then you investigate other options. But I was like, this is a big no-no. And while I was watching this, I was also transcribing the episode with the angel maker,
yes,
who has this brain tumor, right? And I was noticing how many similarities there were between this episode and what's happening to the angel maker. And I'm like, is Will sick? Is he actually sick? And and I came back to this and I was like, yes, something's wrong with Will. Something is physically wrong with this man.
Do you want to guess anything? Do you want to do a prediction of any kind?
I don't know. I feel like it would be really cheesy if they did a brain tumor.
Okay.
But maybe some kind of growth. I don't know. Did he get a concussion or something? But I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I have no idea.
Sure. I'm fascinated by this idea. I didn't know that you had written about this in your academic career when we started this podcast. If I did, I would not have been able to shut the fuck up about it. So the fact that it just comes up naturally within the course of the show, and it's going to be something I think that your red flags are going up, and they're probably going to stay up for a few episodes. So we're just gonna keep rolling with it. It is a lot for Hannibal. And I think it's just, this is another sign of Hannibal manipulating Will, right? We've talked a lot about him, his ability, his desire to control the things around him. And this is just another one of those of pointing Will in a direction.
In a different direction. And also one thing that I I thought back to is the fact is like his sense of smell, right? So like if Will is sick, then he must know, and he's therefore like purposely pointing him elsewhere, which is like awful. Like, I don't know. Can Will die of whatever it is that he has? Like, anyway, I don't know.
Poor Will is all I will say. Poor Will. Hannibal changes the subject, not flirtatiously this time, but he asked about the crime scene. And Will describes this killer building this totem pole as marking his achievements. And Hannibal is getting worried. He says that Will empathizes so completely with the murders that Jack has him looking at that it's breaking his mind. And he goes so far to say, I don't want you to wake up looking at a totem of your own making. And I feel like this works in a couple of different ways. Like there's like the metaphor of a totem of this like gross monument to your quote unquote achievements, right? That he's talking about. But then also like kind of insinuating that Will could be a murderer, right? Because that's one of the things that Will is worried about, having killed Garrett Jacob Hobbs, and playing into Will's fear of how much he like responded to that emotionally. Is again, fuck you, Hannibal. Is the
fuck you, Hannibal? And that was also something that I was mentioning in the Angel Maker episode, where I was like, did Will kill those people? Because it sounds like he could have.
Yes.
And I just
makes you want to scream. Makes you want to scream. We're going to catch up with our girl Abigail. We get our intro to the show, and then we're going to catch up with Abigail, whom we haven't really seen significantly in a while. She showed up in one of Will's dreams, and that's really about it. She's in group therapy. She's describing hearing her dad's voice every day whispering into her ear, saying that he told her to kill girls again and again, so that so it told me that he killed girls again and again so that he wouldn't have to kill me. And she wants to know why, like what it is about her that was so bad that he had to kill, that he wanted to kill her so bad. And when she looks up, we realize all of the group therapy participants have turned into her father's victims. And they're basically just yelling at her like, you know, he should have killed you. He should have killed you because he wouldn't have killed me. And then they all disappear, and we see Nick, the person that she actually killed, and he says he should have killed you so that you wouldn't have killed me. And then she wakes up in bed sweaty, having from this nightmare.
This is one of those scenes where I just couldn't take notes even on rewatch, because I was just so fascinated with what was happening on screen, and I have nothing else to say except wow, that's what I have in my notes, like, and that's it.
Intense. It's extremely so intense. Will arrives in Jack's office, and he's there to apologize rather sheepishly. And Jack is like, "What's about what? Like, what's going on? Like, are you okay?" And Will is confused. He assumed that when he blacked out and drove 3.5 hours to see Hannibal, that he left some sort of impression on Jack. And Jack was like, "Nah, I didn't even notice anything." Jack even Will even go so far to say, like, "I seem fine to you," and Jack presses him on this. And boy, if Hannibal is a manipulator, Jack is in the same fucking class, because he's like, you know, if there's a problem, you need to tell me there's a problem. Is there a problem, Will? And Will is like, no. And this is just such a huge example of manipulating somebody, because it's obvious there's a problem. Like, you can't look at Will and go like, that's normal. Like, Alana looks at Will and is like, I want to date that, but I gotta fix it first. Like, I mean, like, you can easily tell that he is under some sort of mental and emotional duress. Like, he's obviously not at optimum performance level. Like, he shouldn't be at work, right? Like, you can kind of tell that. And instead of taking the responsibility as a leader and as a mentor, Jack pushes that responsibility back onto Will and says, well, you have to tell me if you're sick. And I don't know anything about, like, kind of medical stuff really at all. I'm not a trained expert, but I would imagine that it's much more difficult for someone to admit they have a problem than for someone to reach out and help them with that problem. And it just feels really icky that Jack is doing this.
Of course. Like, I mean, that's something that we've talked about a lot in this podcast, about how, like, Jack uses similar manipulation tactics than Hannibal. And here it's no different. Like, because Jack doesn't actually want Will to tell him that there's a problem, right? Because then he wouldn't be able to use him anymore in his investigations.
Exactly.
He wouldn't be able to use him to close cases for his own advantage, right? For his own advancement within the FBI. And so he's making sure that Will won't tell him, right? By putting the exact kind of pressure on Will that he knows will make him not want to tell him, which is particularly awful given that like Will was there for Jack when Jack needed help.
Right. Like, just showed up with questions unasked, just was there for his boy, right? And now you have this, which is Jack just like, oh, I can't help you because I have to use you.
I need Beverly to intervene, frankly.
This whole show needs Beverly. Like, we need way more Beverly, to be honest with you. We should always be asking where Beverly is when she's not on the screen.
Because again, like, because the ERT team is like so like, I don't know, loosey-goosey with their roles and responsibilities. Like, I don't really know what Beverly's like training is, but she would know that something's wrong with Will. And I need her to intervene.
We need her. We need her now. Yeah. We're going to jump back over to Abigail, who is meeting with Freddie Lowndes. She tells Freddie that she sold her parents' house, but didn't really get a good price for it because, you know, it's a murder house. And Freddie says it doesn't matter anyway, that she's being sued and that the victims' families are probably going to get all of that money. But she can get her own money if she helps Freddie write a book about her father. Freddie says, like, there's nobody else that knows more about what your father did than I do. And Abigail says, well, what about Will Graham? He's like, well, let's not talk about Will. And Abigail says, Will avoids me because I make him feel like my father. And Freddie says, feeling like your father makes him feel like a killer. And Abigail is just like, I'm going to ignore that statement too. I don't really know how to respond to that.
Such a piece of shit, honestly. Like, I dislike her so much.
And Abigail agrees finally to allow Freddie to tell her story, to write this book. Mm-hmm. And you're right. Like, it's interesting because in the show, she's such a carefully coiffed and poised character, but she's got this kind of like scumbag like profession situation happening, and in the books, like the scumbag is just full present. Like in the books, like this is like described as like a short, fat, greasy kind of like scumbag dude, reporter guy. It's an interesting twist the way that they did Freddie Lowndes, and I kind of love it because like you look at her and you think like, oh, she can do this and she could do this respectively, but like she's also like getting into the dirt. So.
But that's the thing, like, to me, even though no matter how pretty she is, no matter how like well groomed she is such a scumbag. Like the way that she manipulates Abigail, like I don't even care. Like, it's one of those things, like, you know how sometimes like really beautiful people are really, really awful?
Yes.
And you're just like, you can no longer see their beauty just because of how awful they are. And you're just like, you smell like vinegar to me now. Like, I don't know if that's just me, but like, I get that.
No, I think that's
how
a really
I feel
good,
about Freddie Lowndes.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it, of just like, they smell like vinegar. Like, they're just off-putting. Absolutely.
Anyway. And I'm kind of torn here because obviously like autobiographical writing like is actually like kind of a normal reaction to really big life events and particularly to trauma. And it's well documented that like it can help not only the person doing the writing, but also the people reading in order to deal with the things that they've been through. But this is Freddie Lowndes we're talking about here, right? Like that's partnering with Abigail. And again, like my red flags, like there are not, I don't have enough hands to put them all out.
You're going to run out of them, yeah. You're like that TikTok guy, the red flag guy on TikTok, who just runs back and forth with a giant red flag.
Yep.
We're going to jump to the morgue, which is now packed with the bodies that they have pulled away from the totem, and also pictures of the way it was assembled. They've counted up a total of 17 bodies, and the most recent one is special, as Will describes. The 7 graves that were around the totem pole are all wrongful deaths that were attributed as accidents. And Will just is like, they're all murders, and turns around and walks away. I'm like, it must be really difficult working with this guy on a day-to-day basis.
For sure.
And we go to Will's classroom where he's going through the list of victims that they've identified, saying that every death was made to look like something else. Like the method of these murders is less important than the simple fact that they die, except for this latest one, where this killer built a literal monument to his kills and put this latest victim on top of it. It's ostentatious is the word I think Will uses. So something changed. If the design was to remain unnoticed, why is he coming out to the light now?
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting You're using like the words, or like Will uses the words like coming out to the light, because it made me think about that this is also what Abigail is doing, right? Like coming to the light by telling her story, and also possibly unearthing some other secrets as well.
You know, we didn't specifically say this, but to go back to that Jack and Will conversation, like when we're talking about pushing boundaries, right? Like, think that I just wanted to relate that back to our theme. I don't think we specifically said that, even though it does fit, right? Like this is, and also like the killer is doing this. Like the killer was working within the confines of his own design, and now he's pushing against that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Alana steps in the room, and we realize that Will has just been talking to an empty classroom. Whether or not he finished his class and they all left and he's just been sitting there this entire time, or he's just been doing this the entire time. And Alana interprets this as like rehearsing, like, oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you. If you're like practicing your speech, I don't know what you call it with your lecture. Your lecture. There you go. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. Thank you.
And just like get this man a brain scan. just get him to the nearest hospital, throw him into an MRI machine, and get him a brain scan. Like that is all I want. Like,
yeah, and it's even worse because Alana comes in, and we talked a lot about Alana and Will and their relationship in the last episode where they kissed for the first time, and she kind of did well, now that I can have you, I don't want you thing. And we see the same thing here where she's like, oh, I regretted the way that I left. And he's like, regretted it, and that you wanted to redo it. Like you could tell he's just so fucking confused. And she says like, I don't want to mislead you, but I don't want to lie to you either. And I'm like, girl, like pick a lane. Like you gotta, you can't. Yeah. And she even says like, oh, I have feelings for you, but like I can't have these feelings for you because you're unstable. And I guess that's fine, and I guess I understand it, but like keep it in your pants, Alana.
Listen, like this is just so messy, right? Because like she like you said, now that she rejected him and she can't have him anymore, she wants him again. And I'm telling you, Alana Bloom, like this is textbook comp het. Go kiss a girl. You'll be fine. Like it will be okay. Like I promise you.
I've seen this phrase comp het tossed around, and I can kind of pick it up via context. But then it was everyone's using it to describe Chapel Roan's VMA performance. And I'm failing on my context clues to pick up with this. I guess. I mean, can you give me just a brief definition of it? Because not to like educate the cis white guy or anything on you, but I've never had an actual definition. So
it's basically a portmanteau word for compulsory heterosexuality. And it's this idea that is particularly affecting queer women, whether they're bisexual or lesbians. And it's basically this idea that like girls are taught to want to get the attention of boys, but for girls who like girls, when they get the attention of a boy, they're like, ew, I don't want him anymore. Because, the goal is to just get the attention, but once you have it, you don't actually like boys, so you don't want
you don't want any of the physical stuff. Okay.
Exactly. You're like, I just want you to like me, but now that you like me, I find you disgusting because I don't actually like boys, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's this idea, and that's why like Good Luck Babe particularly is hailed as like a song about compulsory heterosexuality, because it's about like a lesbian telling her lesbian lover that like you can kiss as many boys as you want, you're not going to be a straight woman ever. There you go. One
day we need to, if Mads Mikkelsen is ever on Cameo, we need to pay him to do that face-to-face thing that she does during the bridge of that song, because every time I see her perform it, I'm like, face-to-face. Yeah, I just love it so much.
She's so good. She's so good. I love this girl so much.
Alana asks Will very specifically, do you feel unstable? And Will does a thing that he's going to do later with another potential romantic partner, where he just kind of nods slowly. She hugs him, and he kind of sinks into this hug, and the camera lingers on his face. I took a screenshot of this with my phone because he he just looks so miserable. Like he just looks like this physical contact is like almost a lifeline for him, but it's also miserable for him because he realizes like as much as this physical contact is like surrounding him and helping him, it's not the physical contact that he wants, right? From Alana. There's a boundary there that he's not crossing, to take this back to our theme.
Mm-hmm. And this moment really kind of made me realize that nobody has a baseline on Will. And what I mean by that is that like Alana never spent time with him alone, right, before the start of this season. Hannibal met him when the season started, and Jack, like, frankly, has just no interest in knowing him, right? Like, I think we can say that, and that's fair.
Yes.
And even us as viewers, like, we've only known Will Graham since the beginning of this season, so we don't know what he was like before. And the reason this is important is that, like, when people are behaving oddly, it's the people who have known them for a while, like the people who have a baseline on them, who are like, something's wrong with you, like you need a brain scan. But here, everyone is like, you're unstable. Don't tell me anything is wrong because I don't give a shit. Or like, it's all in your head, Will. And like, Will could potentially be very sick, like I said earlier, and no one would know. No one would know because nobody had a baseline on him.
Yeah, it's almost like he was isolated right before Jack brought him into this world, and it's kind of fascinating that he probably isolated himself for a reason. If we talk about him being on the spectrum, he probably had feelings like this and pulled away from the world specifically to avoid situations like this, and then being drawn out, and now he's going through all of this kind of mental anguish, and also could be physically reacting to something. We don't know. Who knows? Get this man a brain scan.
Get this man a brain scan.
we just
goddamn brain scan.
Will and Hannibal are visiting Abigail, having heard the news that she's going to write a book with Freddie, and trying to convince her that this is an absolutely terrible idea. And it's just very funny. Neither one of them are like this idea at all. No. Like, that's like, because Abigail tells them that like Freddie wanted her to write about Will and Hannibal in her book, and I can't tell which one of them hates the idea the most. And Will kind of goes on this like weird speech that ends with like, all of this will change. Things are changing for me too. And I'm like, wait, to make it about you, Will. Like, what are you doing? Like, talk to Abigail. And Abigail like kicks back at this too, saying, just because you killed my dad doesn't mean you get to be him. Which is a line that like only a certain amount of people can say to somebody. Like that's a real, it's a rare line that you get to, it's a rare burn. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got him. Right. Rare burn. And Abigail says, like, I don't need your permission to do any of this. And I love Hannibal's response where he says, you don't need our approval. You don't need our permission. You don't need our approval. But I'd like to think that would be important to you. And I really, really like that, saying, like, we were there to help you. Like, ostensibly, we have been here to help you. Like, you haven't been in the last 4 episodes. We've been busy. But you're still a guest star, and we're here to help you. And it's... And we hope that relationship that we've established is, enough for you to listen to what we have to say. And I think layered into this, as Hannibal looks at her, like, very specifically saying, like, the relationship that you and I have established with one another outside of that anybody else knows, which is not good, which is also a little creepy. No. The second that Hannibal starts talking, like, starts his double speak with Abigail, like, all like just my heartbeat stops. Like, I can't deal with any of this. But what we're seeing here, like this conversation between Hannibal and Will with Abigail, but particularly Hannibal, is actually like a very real debate, like, or conversation about autobiographical writing. And I like to take the example of Prince Harry's memoir, just because it was so controversial and polarizing. Like, some people said that, like, he should be able to freely write about anything that happened in his life because it is his life. And then you've got the other side of that coin, where people argued that, like, the people he was writing about, like, hadn't consented to be in a published work and to have their lives exposed in that way. And this is true of any memoir, really, like, not just Prince Harry. Like, think if you had to write a memoir, like, I'm pretty sure that there are probably some people in there who would be, like, maybe not super happy with the stuff that you would have to say. Mostly Autumn.
But the other argument is that it is your life, and therefore you should be able to write about it however you wish. And that's kind of the conversation that we're seeing between Abigail and her dads. Like, they're literally, like, stretching each other's boundaries in that sense.
I love that you're already calling them her dads. That's so good.
But I mean, that's what they're calling themselves,
That's
right?
true. It's absolutely true. Yeah.
I'm using their words.
I miss the Prince Harry memoir stuff.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I can only imagine the stuff that he would write about people and have people be upset because that's the royal family is such an insular organization as a whole. Like having anything said that's not officially approved to the official channels or whatever would be vaguely bad.
Oh, it was very bad. It was very, very bad.
Abigail insists that she just wants people to know that she didn't help kill those girls. And Hannibal kind of walks a little closer to her and is threatening almost when he says, like, are you ready for what will come through that door when you open it? Man, Hannibal is terrifying.
It's not vaguely threatening. It's just a threat.
It's just an actual threat. Okay, that's fine.
It's just an actual threat. Like, it's a thinly veiled one, but it's a threat, that only Abigail can really understand. But it's a fucking threat, man. Like,
and again, we talk about pushing boundaries, right? Like this is, we cut from this to someone literally opening up a grave. This is something that always gets me on a rewatch. I think I've seen this episode probably 3 or 4 times, and every single time I'm like, well, this is Hannibal digging up Nick to like put Abigail in her place, and it's going to be revealed that that's absolutely not what's happening. But every single time it gets me. I don't know why.
It's funny because I didn't get it the first time that I watched it. So like in the scene where that happens, like I have trouble understanding maths. So like I didn't quite understand what was going on exactly. But I was like, who knows? Who knows? Is it Will? Has he understood it? What's going on? So anyway, yeah, there you go.
We go do some criminal stuff. They've identified some of the bodies. The one at the bottom is from 40 years ago, and Will thinks that there's going to be some sort of connection between the first and the last. Jack interrupts. Fortunately, we don't deal with science stuff for too long. He brings Will and to his office along with Hannibal and Alana. And tells them that Nick's body has been found in Minnesota. And Jack has flown the body to the morgue, and he wants Abigail to identify him, even though they've already got an identification on him. He wants Abigail specifically to look at the body to see her reaction. And no one in the room agrees with Jack whatsoever.
And I have to say here that Jack has excellent boundaries because he's like, I know what I'm entitled to do, and I will do it regardless of what anyone tells me. And Hannibal even says like that line that I absolutely love. And you can tell that Hannibal is just like rolling his eyes as he says it. He's like, Jack has the look of a man with no interest in anyone's opinion but his own.
It's so good. It's so good.
I love it.
And again, you talk about him having boundaries, but also this is him pushing boundaries, right? Like this is him.
Oh, of course.
Like I don't think that I'm pretty sure Abigail is supposed to be 17 in this. Like, I think she's a minor. Like having no reasonable legal guardian would allow something like this to happen. Like, you've already got an identification on the body. My daughter, this girl who's my responsibility, I'm not going to allow her for you to barrage her with questions while standing over the corpse of someone who attacked her. There's no way this happens, right? Like, this is definitely crossing a line, and everybody knows it. And you can tell because Alana's body language as she escorts Abigail into the morgue where Jack is standing over the body of Nick, like her body language is like, I fucking hate this and I hate you for making me do this.
Right. It's kind of funny, actually. I always thought that she wasn't a minor, specifically because like otherwise she wouldn't have been staying in a psychiatric hospital where there would have been other adults. But again, like this is such a like this show is so loosey-goosey with procedure that it's very possible.
I could be wrong too. Like it could be one of those things where like she's a schoolgirl. Like I guess if we see her like recruiting college age students, she's probably over 18 or something. And like but I don't know. I don't. But again, like I don't think any reasonable person, if she had any reasonable fathers in her life,
she was applying for college. I think. So I don't know how old that would make her, but
so I graduated high school when I was 17, but that was because my birthday was in November, and so like I turned 18 that year. Most kids are 18 when they graduate high school and start going to college.
Okay. So she might be like just a very young adult.
Yes. Yeah. I think they skew her young on purpose too. Like they make her look a lot younger than she is. Jack kind of just barrages her with questions, asking her if she had anything to do with it, asking her, saying, oh, he was killed by being gutted with a hunter knife. Like, you know how to do that. Your father, taught you how to do that. And Alana tries to stop this, but Jack just overrules her, calling her Dr. Bloom very specifically and saying, like, this is, you're invited here. Like, I can just kick you out. And then he says something really interesting that's easy to look over, I think. He asked her where she goes when she escapes from the hospital. And we know that she's escaped once and went to Hannibal. But this is a reveal that she's been escaping many times, and we don't know what she's doing. She says that she's just got to get away. Like, she's just got to kind of decompress. And he asked her if, do you meet with anybody? Did you know Nick? Did you go meet Nick, or did you go find Nick or do anything with Nick while you were out? And she's like, absolutely not. And she just kind of keeps insisting, like, I don't know anything. I know he was trying to kill me, and all I could think about is that I was going to die in that house after all. And she begins to cry as she remembers this attack on her. And it's for as much as we know that this is wrong, or that this is a lie, like, she's putting on a very, very good performance.
Mm-hmm. I mean, so she says with a lot of conviction that she survived, right? And I wanted to note that because I want to come back to it later. And this is also something that Hannibal had told her in an earlier episode, that, like, she did what she had to do in order to survive. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jack says, you haven't seen him since the attack. And she says, only in my nightmares.
So this moment, so anyway, in this moment, I realized that Abigail is a very practiced liar. Because she knew exactly what she had to say, so that nothing that she says was a lie. And yet she still wasn't telling the truth, or the whole truth. And, like, that is really practiced behavior. And I was like, oh no.
She's getting good at this. I wonder what she does when she escapes from the hospital.
Well, it's not so much as that she's getting good at this, is that she had to have been really good at this before.
Yes.
So, like, there were other things that were happening before that made her a really practiced liar. And, remember how I was like, I don't buy that her dad was really loving and whatnot. Like, there you go.
Abigail leaves, and Alana kind of escorts her out, but Alana comes back, and she yells at Jack, saying that, like, Abigail is obviously working very hard to hide something, but it isn't the murder of Nick. And he's like, why do you think she's telling the truth? And Alana says, because even if I didn't trust Abigail, like, Hannibal was there the whole time. Any reservations I have about Abigail do not extend to Hannibal. And I'm just like, And then she says he has no reason to lie about any of this, and I'm screaming on my couch, just literally screaming on my couch.
To be fair, from her point of view, it's very logical. Like, why would she be, like, distrusting of Hannibal, right? Like, she's established her own boundaries in this particular moment, right? Like, she doesn't fully trust Abigail, but she trusts Hannibal because, like, she's always felt safe around him.
Yeah.
So why would she? Why, right?
Why would she distrust anything about Hannibal, right? Like, there's no reason to right now. And it's just
for her. We know that she should distrust him.
It's like they were like, let's make this show as ironic as possible, as much as possible. Like, we just want people to literally feast on the irony of everything that happens in this show.
Feast indeed.
Hannibal is confronting Abigail, saying, kind of in his, like, Hannibal way, like, it can be a comfort to see the corpse of a monster, like, to see it kind of splayed in front of you, to know it's not going to attack you again. And she says, he wasn't the monster, but sometimes I feel like one. And he asked her, is that why you uncovered the body? And I think it's a perfectly reasonable conclusion to come to, that, like, as you're watching the show, for Hannibal to have dug up the body specifically to, like, put Abigail in a position of defense, to, like, get her to not write this memoir, to get her back under his control or whatever. But no, we find out it's exactly the opposite. Like, she literally dug up the body, left it for the FBI to found. And she did this because she wanted to control what comes through the door, to, as she says back to Hannibal, like, no longer does she have to really worry about them finding the body. They already have. Like, she's already survived Jack Crawford's questioning. Like, she's past this point. And it's so, this is such a twist. Like, every single time it gets me, and I don't know why.
I think it's because we kind of see Abigail, like, as, this idea of like she projects her victimhood or something. Like I think Alana said that in one of the earlier episodes. And I think that like we as the audience do see her like as a victim, like she was manipulated by her dad. She was manipulated by Hannibal. She is being manipulated by basically everyone around her, by Freddie Lounds. And here, like she's doing this one thing that really like gives her the upper hand. And it feels really different from everything that we had seen her do before. Like she was always on the defensive, whereas here she's on the offensive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to mention too that like you can be a victim as well as a perpetrator at the same time, right? Like that's it doesn't victimhood doesn't necessarily excuse behavior. Sometimes it can just explain it. And I think it's perfectly reasonable to empathize and feel sorry for what she's gone through, and then to also realize like, this person that she is becoming or has become is very scary. It can be a little terrifying. Hannibal says, "You betrayed my trust in such a way that made me want to go hide behind my couch as I was watching the show."
I know. I was like, oh my God, if Hannibal was talking to me. But again, she doesn't know yet the extent of Hannibal's like awfulness, right? And she is really testing his boundaries here. And seeing what he did to Franklin and Tobias in the last episode, I'm just like, don't betray his trust. Because he says, like, I need to trust you, Abigail. What if I can't?
And I just... knowing that he's trying to set himself up as her father, and doing this, I need to be able to trust you. What if I can't? Kind of vague, threatening thing. And knowing how much that she's already reliant on him for comfort and for mentorship and for, safety. Terrifying, absolutely terrifying. I'm not sure Will would be any better in his current condition, but Hannibal is arguably worse. It's so much scarier. Yeah.
Well, especially like with the twist of the totem killer, right?
Yes.
Like you're like, oh no. We'll come back to that. So
we go back to the lab. They're doing police stuff. They figure out some stuff, and it leads them to the house of an old man who is the totem pole killer. This is legendary actor Lance Henriksen, who has been in everything and is just amazing. I want to specifically call out, like, Brian Fuller apparently created this character as a callback to a character that Lance Henriksen plays in Millennium, which is a show from Chris Carter. And also he shows up as that character from Millennium in the show X-Files, which of course you have seen multiple times, and I am currently we're doing a podcast about. Just love the connections. Just absolutely, like I think I told you last night, like everybody talks about Super Hulak, but like really it's Hannibal, X-Files, Supernatural. Like those are the three that really should be linked.
SuperHanniFiles.
SuperHanniFiles. There we go.
I mean, I love this because, like, it's so funny because I saw his face and I was like, where do I know this actor from? And then when you told me this, I was like, oh, it's that episode. Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah. It's, and I mean, also, like, Terminator, right? Like, he's in a bunch of different movies and stuff. So,
sure.
Here,
yeah, whatever.
He's packed up his entire house. You can see like the boxes and everything. And he's basically just waiting with the door open for somebody to show up and catch him. And as Will and Jack and no other police officers for some reason come in, it doesn't matter, but it's just so funny the way that they're played so loosey-goosey with this stuff. Like Will is obviously sick and needs a brain scan, but like, here's a gun, come with me to the suspect's house, whatever. This guy says that he had faith that they would find me because he'd let them, and just says I don't have the fight anymore. And he says that he basically killed all of these people because he said I had every reason to kill them. They just had no reason to die. And he kind of brags about just being this like invisible killer, about being able to blend into the community and kill without anybody knowing, and then even like go to their funerals afterwards.
Yeah, like he says specifically, like, I could wave at a lady and smile, chew the fat with her in church, knowing that I killed her husband. And like, that is literally Hannibal, right? Like in the episode where Abigail kills Nick, he like ends up like holding the grieving mother of Abigail's best friend, knowing that he's the one who killed his daughter. And again, I don't like these parallels.
It's even worse when you do a little research and realize this was going to be a recurring character at one point.
Really?
And Brian Fuller specifically wanted this character to be like somewhat of a father figure to Will, and for that relationship to build in some sort of way. And obviously it didn't happen. Or I guess not obviously to you, but no, it does not happen. No. He doesn't show up again. But I can imagine all sorts of fucked up things coming from that too. So kind of glad we avoid that.
Wow.
He also says that, like, you know, he's not rich, so like he thinks that prison will be a luxury compared to the retirement that he would get. And he describes, you know, how popular he will be for having been this like kind of famed killer in prison, which is something that, like, I don't know that the books necessarily get into. They get into a little bit about how like a lot of these killers like crave the fame and the attention that they get after the fact. And he says that he's securing his legacy. And now it's time for a little bit of a twist. We didn't really talk about all of the sciencey stuff that's happening, but essentially the body at the top of the totem pole was the son of the guy at the bottom of the totem pole. And when they tracked it down, they realized, like, oh wait, they're not actually biologically related. And it turns out this dude was in love with the wife and had an affair with her before he killed her, but he loved her too much to put her on the totem pole. But assumed that the son was the first guy's son and says that he shouldn't exist, not knowing that it was his own son. And Will takes great glee in explaining this to him, that he killed his own legacy. Yeah. You didn't secure your legacy, you murdered it. Will is he's like, this is finally a good day. Like, I got a W in the corner. This has been a real shit week.
And it's so okay. So I've been talking about like the parallels between this killer and Hannibal, and like again this idea that like he killed his own legacy, his own child. If Hannibal is positioning himself as Abigail's dad, yeah, I don't know. I don't trust this show.
Yeah, the show is
trust this show.
Especially because like we go right into Will dreaming of Abigail, right? Like we go from you murdered your legacy to Will tossing and turning, sweating in bed. He sees Nick's dead body sit up on the table. He sees himself stabbing Nick in the gut. And then all of a sudden Nick turns into Abigail, and now Abigail is stabbing him in the gut. And Will wakes up and he's standing over Nick's body at the morgue. And he rushes to Hannibal's office, where Hannibal is just like sketching some stuff, like sketching a bridge like you do. He's just chilling out. Yes. And he immediately tells Hannibal, Abigail killed Nick. And I think one of the most shocking moments of the show, Hannibal just says, yeah, I know. Yep. Mm-hmm. And you could tell Will is just like, oh, motherfucker, I knew you knew. I didn't want you to know, but I'm so glad you told. Like, he's the amount of emotions that this man runs through in just like a brief second all show on his face. We don't talk enough. I don't think we mentioned, is it Hugh Darcy? Yes. Just the acting ability, the sheer acting ability that he's doing with Will. I think this moment in particular really got me, of just, he's obviously like not feeling well. He's been shook to his core because he didn't believe that Abigail was responsible for really anything, and now he's finding out. He kind of feels like he knows this, and also one of his best friends, right? His best friend and confidant is in on it. Was also hiding this from him. So like, my dad and my daughter, my co-dad and my daughter were hiding stuff from me. And it's just a moment, and like he goes through all of the emotions here.
Mm-hmm. Well, because I think he asks him like, how did you know? And Hannibal says, I helped her dispose of the body. And it's like, oh my God, what are you doing? And it's like kind of textbook, like, blackmail, I guess, or abuse or whatever, however you want to call it, of like getting somebody in on the secret so that now they're like, you know, they can't deny that they knew, right? So then they're like a part of the conspiracy as well. And I think what shocked me the most, though, in this exchange is when Will goes, evidently not well enough. Like, that shook me, because like I was like, oh, okay, so it's not that he's mad like that Hannibal, it's like, what he's mad about here is that Hannibal didn't use his serial killer skills well enough. And I just feel like the Overton window has dramatically shifted here for Will. I'm just like, what is going on? Get this man a brain scan.
I also want to talk a little bit about this leap that Will has made. Because obviously Will's, you know, what Hannibal refers to as an empathy disorder, or what Jack refers to as Will's abilities, are this idea that he can put himself in someone's point of view so well that he can kind of he can pull information from that in order to and then use that alongside. He always insists alongside the evidence in front of him, right? Like he always insists, like it's not just me making up stuff, it's the evidence telling me things, to come to these conclusions and then to work backward from there to be able to prove that he was right. Here we see this, like he almost just has a vision, right? Like this is, and I'm curious how this takes you, because it feels vaguely like, not like supernatural, but like it's such a huge leap. And then he believes it. And then I feel like even though there's not like physical evidence of this yet, when he goes to Hannibal and Hannibal confirms it, he's like, fuck. Like it's almost like this thing that I have, this ability that I have is almost out of my control at this point, where I'm literally dream walking, solving crimes. Like that's fucking crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, like until we find out the results of that brain scan, like it's really hard to tell. But like, because it seems like that empathy disorder, quote unquote, was there before the season, right?
Yes.
So like, it's something that's like well documented. So I'm like, I don't know. Like, again, it depends. It depends on so many things. But it's like, is it part of like the sickness? Is it like, I don't know. But it feels like right now, like he just needs a real doctor.
He just needs somebody to help. An actual person that wants him to be better.
Yeah.
Will says that he hasn't told Jack, mostly because he did not want it to be true. You have a note here, and me and Autumn like rewound this last night. Hannibal makes a decision here, right? Like, as he looks down at his pencil sharpening scalpel and like moves it like an inch to the left. Like he makes a decision of like, I could deal with this two ways. Like this is, it's almost video gamey in the way that, like, you know, press A to spare Will, press B to kill Will. It's so good. Like it's just a tiny little moment too. But
it holds so much tension, right? Because we know what he's capable of. And like he could make it appear so that Will like took his own life, right? I think that it would be like, I think nobody would question that.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so yeah, and the fact that he chooses to spare him, I think, is telling of like how much attachment he has to him. Because last episode he didn't really care, or no, he cared, but
absolutely
he
cared.
Still sent him into danger. And this time he's like, no, you know what? I'm keeping this one.
Exactly.
I'm keeping this stray.
I think he, you know, it's that moment where the stray becomes your pet, right?
Yes, exactly.
Not to like diminish this relationship, because I think even Hannibal is having a hard time, but it's that moment where you connect with something. So last episode, leading up to last episode, he was almost kind of toying with Will to see what Will would do, and then putting Will in harm's way with Tobias, and then having Will come back whole, and them sharing that moment together was the moment where he was like, actually, now this is something I want to protect. And this was him fighting with his instincts. Like, and his instincts tell him, his instincts as a killer, and the reason that he hasn't been caught is probably because he's been absolutely ruthless with having personal connections. And so his instinct is to pick up that scalpel and to kill Will immediately, because he knows something that can damage him. But he puts that aside for that relationship specifically with Will. And then he kind of underlines this a lot. He goes over and he like places his hand on Will's shoulder. He says, you know, he talks about how they're Abigail's fathers now. Did I miss a line somewhere? There's something else in here.
I think it's because
yeah, so this is what I wanted to bring up. Hannibal says everything you know about that night is true except for the end. And he specifically hit it because he knew what Jack would do to Abigail. And Will says, like, this isn't our place to decide. And Hannibal is like, no, but it is. If it's not ours, who? Like, she doesn't have anybody. We are her fathers now. And then very specifically tells Will, you'll murder Abigail's future by going to Jack. And that use of murder, again, he used it earlier with Will, like bringing Will's attention to the idea that Will kind of enjoyed killing Garrett Jacob Hobbs, maybe has a lot of conflicted emotions about killing Jacob Hobbs, about potentially being a murderer, even though it was quote unquote justified. Murdering someone has obviously affected Will, and he's using that to manipulate Will and to hiding this from them. hiding this from Jack.
Well, because like if he murders her future, then he might as well be murdering her, right?
Yes.
And so and we know that Will is so attached to Abigail that he will like he doesn't want to do anything that's going to harm her. And we see that actually in the next line where Hannibal asks like, "Do I need to call my lawyer?" Which I don't know what I was expecting, but somehow like I didn't expect. I don't know why, but I was like, would you really be fighting that in court? Or is this, or like, I don't really believe that, but like, I think maybe it's just like, the set dressing that Hannibal puts on, like to make Will believe that this is a decision that he has made rather than one that he is being coerced into, right?
It's the human suit, right? Like it's because we know that he would probably just disappear into the wind. He wouldn't call a lawyer and like fight it in court. But like the human suit says, oh, I would need to protect myself against legal criminal action. So.
Exactly. And I think that's because I have a line here that says, I'm amazed at the tension in this scene. So good. And I think that's what it is, right? Because it's not really the lines necessarily. It's the fact that like we know that Hannibal wouldn't be fighting this in court. We know that he's coercing Will. We know all of his real and true intentions, and Will doesn't. And that is the tension. It's that Will doesn't know how much danger he's actually in. And I feel like that's a recurring thing for Will. Oh, yeah. Poor Will.
Poor Will, as the name of the story. Hannibal finished this by saying, like, we can tell no one, and then says, in time, this will be the only story any of us cares to tell. And I just want all of the book readers out there to remember the end of the book, Hannibal, which the series is not based on, but, maybe has some similarities.
What?
What? So for any book readers out there who think I don't see this, I do. It's there. I also want to call attention to when Hannibal asks if he needs to call his lawyer, Will just kind of slowly shakes his head no. And I mentioned this earlier when in the conversation with Alana, where she was like, do you feel unstable? And he like reluctantly shakes his head yes, nods his head yes. Like it's very, very similar in the way that he just like reluctantly responds, but kind of wants to because he feels a connection with the person that's asking, so he wants to be honest. Again, where's Beverly? Please, Beverly would be so much better at all of this.
I know, right? Like, Beverly, take him to get a brain scan.
What a powerful scene that just underlines so much about why I love and hate this show, because it's so delicious. Like it's just, and delicious is the word I keep coming back to, that it's just, you just feast upon all of this like tension and irony and drama. And I love it so much.
I just love how understated it is, because really like it's two men in a room, in a beautiful room, right? Like that's what it is. And yet like, this is the scene. Like there's a totem pole of human parts that we barely spent a few minutes talking about. And here we are spending like minutes and minutes talking about like these two men in a room, right? Yes. And I just think that that's the power of Hannibal. It's that like, yes, some of it is grotesque and like unforgettable visually, but what really hits like the emotional parts of us is the relationships between these characters.
Absolutely. And that's why I keep coming back to like, when you ask people about Hannibal, they don't tell you about this episode unless they've truly been Hannibal pilled. Like most people, when they watch Hannibal, they'll tell you about the totem pole or the angel wings or whatever. But like that's because that's what sticks in your brain. And then you watch the show and you're like, oh, that's nothing about that at all really matters. So
no, exactly.
Later, Hannibal is serving dinner to Freddie, Abigail, and Will.
But I have to say, sorry, before you start, I have to say that this is my favorite scene of the episode.
Oh, yeah? Just right off the top, we're getting into it. Okay, I love it.
I'm going to tell you, like, right there.
So that sets the stage. Like, and Hannibal is bringing out a plate for Freddie, who turns out is vegetarian. And then I think Hannibal said something like, I had no idea. I would have never thought.
So is it bad that I was like, damn it?
A little. Yeah, a little. You did say earlier in this episode that you could excuse cannibalism. I just want you to know that. And now
I can. In this context, I can.
And now you're like, oh, dang, he didn't get to feed human meat to somebody.
I know. I'm like, this is like, truly, is this what it means to be Hannibal pilled? Like,
yes,
is this
100%.
Okay.
100%.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. Officially, it's official.
This is a tense dinner as well, because Will and Freddie are kind of verbally sparring over what the truth is and how to use it. And Freddie says that, she wants to tell Abigail's version of the truth. And Abigail says, like, I have no secrets to hide. And Freddie's like, no, everybody's got secrets. And during this conversation, I think Hannibal chimes into the end here that everybody just wants to protect Abigail. Several things happen in this conversation. The first that is, as Will is talking to Freddie, he's doing this thing that Hannibal does and is like using doublespeak to talk to Abigail. And Abigail realizes that Will knows her secret. And then Abigail takes a bite of her whatever meal this is. I forget the name of it.
It's actually, I found it because I was like, that looks delicious. It's roasted tenderloin with pomegranate blood splatter.
Yes, thank you. She takes a little bite of her tenderloin, and her eyes just flash over to Hannibal in a moment that I am just fascinated with. I love this so much.
Listen, okay. Didn't I say she would recognize the taste of human flesh? That was one of the first things that I said when I saw Hannibal cooking for her. I was like, this girl has been fed human meat. She knows what it tastes like. And there we go. And I just felt so vindicated. I think I screamed. I was like, yes!
So I asked you this at the top of the episode. Does it feel good to have?
Yeah.
Does it feel good?
Yeah. Oh, it feels so good. That felt so good. Also, I just want to highlight that this is the first time that Will comes to one of Hannibal's dinner parties.
Yeah, it's the first time he's sat at the table, right? Like, we've seen him eat, but this is the first time that he's actually sat down
at the table.
I didn't notice,
and I feel like this is also like, I don't know if, but it kind of shows that like Will has like, because. I think it was the last episode or the episode before where he like refuses to go to the 2 episodes ago where he refuses to sit at the table. He's like, no, take this bottle of wine and I'm going to go and smile at you awkwardly. And whereas here he's like accepting this probably because now they're partners in crime, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Also, I just want to note, I just put the episode on so I could find this out. This is also the first time that he's dressed appropriately for Hannibal's office. Like, he's got a button-up shirt, he's got like an actual sport coat on. Like, he's not in his normal like outer wear or anything. So, again, I just think that's kind of shows a conformity almost. Like, now that he's embraced Hannibal and he knows this, like he's kind of not necessarily becoming him, but like, losing some of himself in this process, which is probably exactly what Hannibal wants.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, that phrasing, Jeremy.
Sorry.
Why?
Sorry.
But you're right. You're absolutely right. I think that's exactly what's going on. And he's like, like you said, losing parts of himself and embracing more and more of Hannibal's world. Little does he know what Hannibal's world actually means.
And let's take this back to the boundary crossing, right? Yeah. Like, this is him crossing boundaries that he wouldn't normally be associated with the FBI, not necessarily an agent, but like he wouldn't normally do this kind of thing. Like, Hannibal has pushed him to do this.
And he wouldn't also, like, as silly as it sounds, but he wouldn't sit at a fancy dinner party, like, for any reason, right? Like, he's made that pretty clear. And so already, like, this is being pushed, this is being challenged for him. In so many ways, right?
And Freddie has the last line here, which is great, where she says, the salad is amazing. It's a shame to ruin it with all of that meat. And I like that phrase. I like this phrase a lot because obviously, like, the meat is to her, it takes away from the salad. To the table, it can mean several different things, right? Like, it's for Abigail and Hannibal, we know, like, it's a shame to ruin it with all that meat. Like, it's a shame to have all of these bodies on the table. Like, it's a shame to have all of this baggage. And then to Will, it's like, it's a literal body that they're hiding. And it's just, again, I could be reading in too much to this one little sentence, but it just feels so heavy. It feels so heavy with, like, metaphor that I have to talk about it. So.
I don't think you're reading too much into it at all. I think that this show is exactly the kind of show that would put this little innocuous line and expect us to dig into it.
We jump ahead in time. Abigail and Hannibal are washing dishes. And Abigail says, Will knows. And Hannibal's like, yes, he knows, but it's okay. He's lied to Jack Crawford about you, just as he's lied to himself. And we see her start to have this kind of mental dam break as she starts feeling stuff. And Hannibal walks over. He can sense this and says, you're free. No one will know the truth that you're trying to avoid, the one you cannot admit, even to yourself. And her whole face and body almost collapse as she confesses, I helped him. And Hannibal, evil Hannibal says, I can't hear you. And so she has to gird herself and say it louder. And it turns out that she was the one, after all, who found these girls for her father, who befriended them and found out where they lived and led him to them, to kill them. And this was, I think, a question throughout the last 9 episodes. And it's obviously been confirmed here that she was she knew what was happening the whole time. Which again, going back to like if she was probably doing this over years. So as a minor, even if she's not necessarily a minor now, child abuse, very minimum, right? Awful.
Yes.
And probably shouldn't be held responsible for that. I think there's probably, there's a lot of stuff if you applied real world rules to this, but just from our perspective on the show, it's a confession, and it almost brings her and Hannibal closer, which is just fucking terrifying.
Right. Yeah. I think I rewrote.
I love that pregnant pause. That,
yeah, because I wanted to get my thoughts down for this because I didn't want to ramble about it too much. And I think I rewrote it 3 or 4 times yesterday, but she says that she couldn't say no to her dad because she knew that it was them or her, right? And this is where I kind of want to come back to this idea of surviving here, because I think that it's very important. Abigail did really, really horrible things in order to survive. I talked, I think, a few, the episode where they go back to her house, about how I'm pretty sure that she had to learn to survive in that house. And I cannot believe how right I was about that. But then again, I think that's why, I think I always sensed that this was the truth, but I just didn't want to kind of go there. I was like, oh, they're not going to go there, are they? But of course, this is this kind of show, right? So I guess I wasn't really surprised to find out that she helped her dad. I think maybe like Will, I just didn't really want to see it. And I was also really, really mad that Jack was right all along. Legit, I think I was more mad that Jack was right than sad to find out that Abigail did those things, because I was like, yeah, that tracks for Abigail, actually.
It's, for all of Jack's manipulations and for all of Jack's, borderline abuse of Will and the people around him and the things that he put, his students in, right? When we talk about Miriam, he's still a good cop. So and that's proven over and over again. Last episode when he walked into Hannibal's office in the aftermath of Tobias and the Tobias attack.
And Franklin,
yeah. Thank you. I was thinking, I have Francine on the brain because Hurricane Francine just happened. And I was like, of course that's not right.
That's his drag name.
That's his drag name, absolutely. He even said something smells differently here. This doesn't feel simple to me. And it's just kind of obnoxious that he's good at his job while also being this bad. And to kind of finish this scene, she begins to cry. Hannibal comforts her. She literally cries in his arms, and he whispers, I wondered when you would tell me. And she says that I'm a monster, and he says, no, I know what monsters are. Will and I are going to protect you. It's awful. It's so terrifying that he would do this. It's so scary, that you would have this really impressionable woman who has been through literal abuse and who has had to live with what she has done and what her father has done and had to relive it probably in the papers over and over again, and had to kill herself for the first time to actually kill somebody herself, not kill herself. have to hide that, and then to go through Jack Crawford's questioning, and all of that stuff just kind of breaks and comes out as he's holding her, just absolutely cementing the idea that like he's her father now. And Brian Fuller even had a point, like throughout this episode, this is what Hannibal is wanting to do, is wanting to create this family around him, to create that Abigail and Will and he are different than everyone else, and he wants to pull them together to see their differences, to be able to allow them to live with themselves for who they are and not who they want to be. And the whole idea is just, frankly, just an awful little murder family, and I love it and I hate it. And it's just so scary.
You know, Jeremy, I think you're completely right about this. Like, it's really, really horrifying, and I mean, like, obviously Hannibal is the mastermind of this, right? So like, I think we can kind of say that, like, he, like you said, he's the one who wants to create this family, this murder family. And as bad as I feel about Will, who is being coerced into doing these things, like, Will is a grown adult, right? Like, perhaps one who is vulnerable, right? We can definitely say that for a lot of reasons. He is a vulnerable adult, but he's an adult. Whereas Abigail, like, is like, she's still so young, and she is still like at the mercy of this man who, you know, she says, like, one of her first realizations is like, you're just like my dad. And like, that's exactly what it is, because like, was Garrett Jacob Hobbs also not trying to create his own little murder family? Mm-hmm. Right. And I just feel so much for Abigail, and I think that's me projecting, right? Because there's like, as you know, like, the Abigail storyline like hits me like right in the feels.
Yes,
like, I've
absolutely
said that before.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate that she's being manipulated, like, to lie for her father, to lie to other people. And that creates like a situation where you can't create real relationships with others when you're constantly having to lie about the things that you've done. Like, it's just like, you know, he says that Will would murder her future if he told the truth, but the reality is that he's already murdered her future by making her lie about herself, right?
And about her, specifically about her killing Nick, because the moment that it happens, she says, you know, it was self-defense, and he goes, no, this wasn't self-defense. Like, that they won't look at it that way. Like, he forces her into a lie and literally murders her future, right? Like, just literally crosses that boundary, as we keep going back to, of forcing her into to live this lie that she has to then pretend is okay, right? Like, she has to pretend that it didn't happen, to the point where she's like pulling bodies out of the ground to try to get past the trauma that she lives with, to get past all of this weight. And it's very terrifying. Like, it's if Hannibal is capable of doing this, like, what else is he capable of, right? Like, that's the question we have to ask ourselves. And I think we'll probably find out in the next 3 episodes, Mary. I think it's gonna happen.
Oh my God, is there only 3 episodes left?
There's only 3 episodes left, my friend. Like, we're gonna be finished with season 1, and like, people are not gonna even listen to season 5 yet, like, or episode 5 yet. It's going to be crazy. So,
oh wow. You know, sometimes just because like there were a few things on there that I was like, I kind of wonder. The number of times that I have like held myself back from peeping into like the Monster of the Week server, like the Rude Eats spoilers channel, or because I'm like, I want to know what people are saying about like my crazy like, antics about this.
Well, I can reassure you, if there's anything in there that's specifically about the podcast that's not spoilerific, I'm sharing it with you. Mostly it's because people like one person today was like, oh, I'm watching the last episode, and then she came back and was like, whoa. And I was like, everyone's like, yes, we know, we've been there. Oh, no. So it's a lot of actual spoilers, but the actual Rude Each channel, the non-spoiler one, is really, really good. People are talking about like us talking about the podcast there, so you're good for that one.
It's a lot of fun, actually, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it is. It's a good amount of fun. Do you have any thoughts before we go into our review section? I think I'm just we talk about it every time when we get to the end of the episode, where we're both just like emotionally drained about Hannibal. So I don't have any thoughts before we get into our review section.
No, I'm just not entirely sure that we talked about the last scene on the train.
We did. We forgot. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. No, it's fine. It's because there was an interruption that people probably won't hear, but my audio disconnected entirely, so that's why we were not thinking about this.
We have a last scene. It's all in black and white, which is what Hannibal uses to denote like past activities. And Abigail is on a train with her father, and they are literally scoping out victims. And she sees somebody that looks quite a bit like herself, like young, long, straight hair, brown hair. And she goes over to meet her and to talk to her. And we see Garrett Jacob Hobbs sitting there, kind of watching them and looking away and smiling in a very, very creepy way. But this is just further underlining the fact that she legitimately like recruited victims for her father. Just very terrifying.
And this is something that Nick accused her of, right? When he confronted her, he's like, you were the bait, right? You made friends with them. And I remember at the time thinking like, that's never been mentioned before. How would he know that? And then that's kind of what alerted, like the red flags went up, where I was like, oh man, he knows. Like, and I think he might be right about that, right? And the thing is, like, Nick was not a likable character because he like was helping Freddie Lowndes, and just because he was so angry and whatnot. Like, there were a lot of reasons why people would have disliked him. He was an antagonist, but he was right. You know, he was right about that.
Well, and I don't know if you remember, but the person that got him all hyped up about that, right? Was him meeting Freddie Lowndes, the person that wants to write Abigail's story. And again, scumbag behavior, absolute scumbag behavior.
For sure.
We love our witchy redheads in these shows, but also scumbag behavior.
Such scumbag behavior. That's the thing. Yeah, so for final thoughts, I mean, like I said, I don't really have any thoughts. The only thing that I will say is that I'm terrified of the next episode because it's called Buffet Froid, which is literally cold buffet, which in a show like Hannibal is absolutely terrifying.
Oh, is that what that means?
Yes.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Obviously, I was going to look that up. We're probably going to watch the episode this weekend because I'm super excited about Hannibal right now, so we're probably definitely going to watch it. That is okay. Cool. Let's go to reviews. Why don't you start us off, Mary?
Of course. Oh my god. Why did I agree to do this? Why am I putting myself through all of this? Okay.
And why are you having so much fun about it, right? Like, that's
why am I liking it so much?
Why am I liking all of this misery? I don't know. It's so hard.
It's kind of like Will, where he's like hating being in cahoots with Hannibal, but at the same time it like gets him going, you know? He's like, oh, I love this. Anyway, I guess we'll see that eventually, because for sure it has to happen. So I will give this episode 4 stars because with its sweet and sour apple flavor, this Trou Normand offered many unexpectedly icy twists to this season, leaving me hungry for more.
And I'll also give it 4 stars. So it's a deceptively simple flavor, hiding all sorts of secrets within. And this Trou Normand highlighted the previous courses and set the stage for the meal to come.
Oh, yes, so true.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you to all of the people leaving ratings, reviews on Apple Podcasts, and for commenting on the episodes on Spotify. Again, I'll mention I'm responding to all of those. So if you wrote something, more than likely I've at least liked it. For some reason you can't like and comment, but I try to comment or like all of them. So we're talking back to you. So if
you can't like and comment,
you can. Yeah. If you like it, it automatically publishes it, and then I haven't figured out a way to comment on it after that.
No!
And if you comment, you then publish it. And I haven't it's Spotify is so weird. Like, I have a separate Spotify account for podcast stuff that's not like the one that I use to listen to music. So like I can't like just go into the app and like see stuff like as Monster of the Week or as Rudy's, right? Like I have to. Anyway, it's a weird situation. Thank you everybody for commenting. That's what I'm coming back to.
Yeah, thank you for the comments. I actually really love them. Every time you send a screenshot of them to me, I'm like, oh, thank you guys.
The one this morning that someone and their mom are watching the show together and listening to the podcast is very very near and dear to my heart. So thank you everybody for listening. It's it's so great, and it means a lot to us, especially as a podcast that we're just doing for fun. There's no ads,
Literally.
There's no Patreon,
Yep.
there's no Ko-fi.
Nope.
So let's tell everybody where we can be found on the internet. Where are you
For
nowadays?
sure. Well, again, unfortunately, still on Twitter at _. You can also find my Carrying Wayward podcast about supernatural at carryingwayward.com. And you can find my Our Flag Means Death podcast at the Gentleman Pirates Library on Twitter and anywhere you listen to podcasts. What about you, Jeremy?
I would highly recommend both of those shows, by the way. You can find me on Twitter at JG Greer. You can find all of my podcasts about X-Files, Supernatural, Merlin, Cowboy Bebop, Game of Thrones, just about everything. I'm doing all of the TV shows now.
All of them. Just all of them.
This is coming out... Oh, this is coming out way after Halloween, so never mind. We've already released all of our Halloween stuff. So if you want to listen
but
to,
go check it out. There's a lot of Halloween stuff that's going to be coming out apparently.
Yeah. I drank 3 beers and talked over Twilight with Chris, and that was an experience. So go listen to that. And again, thank you for listening. And until the next episode, bon appetit.
Bon appetit, everybody.
Awesome.
Jeremy, I'm so scared.
You're gonna come home
I'm like
exhausted
scared to press play.
tomorrow from the 5K and be like, all right, this is the time. When all of my defenses are low, this is the time.
No, I think I'm gonna watch it today because now I'm so scared. I'm so fucking scared right now.
It's intense. It's intense. It's one of my favorite guest stars. And
who's guesting?
It's the main star from Dead Like Me, which I've mentioned to you a couple of times, which is another Brian Fuller show. So
fun.
When they talked about Miriam Lass being like the little sister to Georgia Lass in Dead Like Me, this is the person that played Georgia Lass in Dead Like Me.
Oh.
So and there's no relation. There's no actual relation. It's all just like, it's just all like referential stuff. Like there's no actual like lore or anything. It's just that character.
Right.
But it's
the Brian Fuller cinematic universe.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the BFCU. Yeah, 100%. That dude, I wonder what that dude is doing nowadays. I don't know that he's done anything.
I don't
recently.
know.
But
what has he done since Hannibal?
Yeah, I know he did the Monsters remake. American Gods. I forgot about American Gods because there was the weirdness after American Gods. Like the first season was really, really good. Boy, and you want to talk about a role for Gillian Anderson? Holy shit! That's a very. But then like season
American Gods, apparently.
Yeah.
Star Trek Discovery.
And that's it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it looks like it's about it. I didn't watch Star Trek Discovery. I'm not like a huge Star Trek guy. Like I like it and I've watched a bunch of it, but I'm not like woo. So.
Oh no.
Anyway.
Okay, sorry, I just saw it because I googled Brian Fuller and like something comes up and I'm just like, oh no, tell me that's not true. So I don't know, I'm gonna read the article because I'm like, I don't want that.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a yeah, enjoy the next episode. It's going to be a lot of fun and I'm curious what your feelings about it. And it's going to be intense, so enjoy.
I'm really scared because when I said buffet froid is cold buffet, like you were like, fascinating.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't want this to be fascinating.
It's I can't wait to watch the episode tonight. I'm gonna call and watch it.
I'm so excited. I want to know what Autumn thinks about it too.
Oh, I'll let you know. I'll definitely let you know as we watch it. I'll be DMing you while we watch it. I hope you have a good day, and I'm sure I'll talk to you between now and then. But good luck on the 5K, and I'm sure you'll do great.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm just hoping to make it before the cutoff time. Like that's all I'm hoping, and I just don't know that I'm going to be able to because I'm not feeling at the top of my shape, and I am very slow. I'm a slow runner, so it is what it is. But there you go.
We were watching. There's this like murder mystery show on Netflix called The Perfect Couple. It's kind of like it's almost like a Glass Onion-y White Lotus kind of show, but like not quite as good as either one of those.
Okay.
And there was a girl like that went on a run for a beach, and like it was so obvious this actress has never run in her life before. Like, because Autumn was like, "That's how I run." Like, that's not good.
It's really hard to run on a beach, by the way. Like the sand is really like makes it particularly hard. But yeah. All right, I am gonna go and watch the next episode.
Excellent, excellent. Podcast for 2 hours about the show, and then immediately watch the next one. I love it. Have a great day.
To you soon. You Bye.
Bye. I like that idea though, just like our language is better than yours, even if your words are fine, we're gonna dress it up a little bit. Like we gotta keep going.
I mean, it's because like historically Quebec is kind of like in a weird space, like geopolitically, right? Like it's in a very English speaking continent surrounded by a lot of English speakers. And so for a long time, like when you were French in Quebec, you couldn't get the same jobs that you could if you spoke English, you know, like there was definitely like a class system associated with that. And like the lower class people were definitely the French people. So there was like this effort by the government at one point to be like, no, French is our language and there will be none of that like discrimination. And so they like put in a bunch of rules and then they just really went overboard.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's kind of fascinating. So, I have a friend that lives in Quebec, an internet friend, not like a real friend, like an internet friend, but like an internet friend that I've known for probably a decade at this point. So it seems weird saying
that's awesome.
not a real friend. And he comments from time to time about the Francification of Quebec and kind of how sometimes it can be kind of annoying and sometimes it can be weird geopolitically, like you said. So most of the times he just posts about video games though, so I don't get a lot about Quebec stuff.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I don't know. I find it super weird because, like, who the fuck cares if you use podcast instead of balado diffusion? Like, that is not like one thing that's going to make the language disappear, right? So.
I'm just, there's an effort down here to maintain Cajun French. Because it's something that's dying out pretty quickly. Although. Like you can go to Autumn was at the library the other day and was like, she was texting me, so like there's these two old people in the line in front of me and they're just full on Cajun French. Like they cannot understand a word that they're saying. And it's a really like, it's a charming thing. But they like we teach French in high school down here I think to try to maintain some of that. But it's one of those things that just like, if you don't grow up with it, like you just don't grow up with it. So you don't, it's hard to get into. Like I would feel very, so there's a thing down here where Cajuns say "sha," C-H-A, or S-H-A, like "sha, babe," and with a Cajun accent, it's perfectly normal. Like I'm gonna "sha, babe" or whatever. But it's become such a thing. Like the people have lost their accents. Autumn was complaining about this. She's like, I hate when I hear these Valley Girl accents say "sha, babe." Like it just doesn't make any sense. So it's,
oh wow, that's too funny.
Yeah, it's kind of funny living in South Louisiana sometimes.
And I mean, that's the thing. I feel like, if you wanted to be a champion for the French language in North America, like I think that makes complete sense, especially for those regions. Like I can't really speak to oh my goodness, what's happening with my voice? But like I can't really speak to what's happening in Louisiana, right? Like with French, because I'm not there. But I know that like in certain communities in like rural Ontario or Manitoba, like there's a lot of people who speak French and who don't receive the same services because they don't, like the services are not in French in that part of Canada, right? Whereas like in Quebec, they've made it like they're a point to offer everything in French, and so much so that they won't offer certain services in English, which is kind of like completely besides the point.
Yeah, no, that's awful. I mean, just like the
well, there you go. One way or another, right? Like if you're not serving your population in the language that they need to be served, then like what the fuck are you doing as the government, right? Like and for both, like
yeah. it just smacks of like, you need to speak English in this country or whatever, and like no, no, you don't. No. You can speak whatever language you want to.
Exactly.
People always forget about the melting pot. They just assume we were gumbo all along, and it's not. That's not true.
I love that.
a lot of individual flavors went into this whole pot situation.
Yeah, exactly. And especially in Canada, because we don't have a melting pot policy. We have a different kind of policy, which is multiculturalism, which is basically like anybody can. Well, that's not true, but like anybody can come and live here, and you can keep your culture, because we are a multicultural country. We're not a melting pot, right? It's not. We don't all become one culture with all of our cultures. Like it stays pretty like everybody keeps their culture when they come to Canada. Obviously, when they talk about that, they don't talk about the fact that like our immigration is so selective that basically only certain people can come here, right? Like
gotcha.
We don't talk about that. That's a big. We don't like to talk about it, right?
Nobody talk about the obvious things that's going on.
Yes, exactly. Nobody talk about the stuff that we don't want to talk about. Like, for a very long time, actually, Canada's immigration policy stated that people from certain countries were just not suited to winter, and therefore were not granted entry.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
I will let you guess what exactly that meant in practical terms, right?
I can absolutely see that. Probably that white dudes from North America. I bet that wasn't.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
that's fine, right?
Man, politics is a system. It's never good. It's just like we've gotten better, but we haven't really gotten like great. So,
no. So anyway,
I'm reading. I'm actually watching and reading The Expanse right now, which is a science fiction series. People call it like Game of Thrones in space. But unlike Game of Thrones, there's not like a lot of sexual violence or anything, so it's a little bit easier to read.
I was actually going to be like, is there as much sexual violence in this one as there is in the other one?
As far as I know, there's none. Like there's like casual mentions of like crimes, but there's no like graphic depictions or anything. But it's interesting because there's kind of like three geopolitical parties. Like there's Earth, there's the colonies on Mars, and then there's the Belters. And the thing I found fascinating about the Belters, who live on like this asteroid belt, like in space, mining materials for the inner planets, is that they have in space, like over time, over 100 years or so, like they've gotten taller. Their bones have extended. They can't deal with 1G weight very well. Things like that. Like they've adapted. So it creates this like almost like are you a different species kind of racism kind of thing. And the books deal with it like as it is, right? Like they present this thing and like characters react to it or have different opinions or whatever. And it's just really fascinating, like the way that it all kind of gels together and everything. So it's also fun reading and watching a show at the same time.
You mean kind of like what you did with Hannibal by reading and watching and everything?
Where I binged 3 books between episode 1 and 2.
Yeah, seriously. Oh my god, by the way, I completely skipped the whole like you guys talking about long legs. I was like, am I allowed to listen to this? I don't know.
We spoil it pretty heavily, so you probably want to watch the movie beforehand.
Okay.
But if it's such an interesting movie because it's obviously homage to Silence of the Lambs, right? Like it pays off.
Yeah.
Like there's a Jack Crawford, like there's a guy that is Jack Crawford in that movie, which is just fascinating to me. But also at the same time, it's got some real spooky vibes. Like, and people talked about it like Nicolas Cage's performance was like camp or whatever. And I don't know if you've seen like the previews or anything where he's like all in this like weird makeup or whatever, but it's an intense performance, and I didn't get camp out of it at all. Like I just got like terrifying psycho killer vibes. So I don't know.
We have different definitions of camp.
I got saved the other day on TikTok. I had been looking forward to a horror movie. I'm trying to remember the name of it now. I was looking forward to it so much I can't remember the name.
Oh no!
But I saw the preview and Brandy was in it, like the singer Brandy, and I was like, oh well, I haven't seen Brandy in like forever. This is going to be great.
Seriously?
And it looks like a cool like kind of spooky horror movie kind of situation. And then a reviewer that I follow on TikTok was like, hey, so I followed this and I just have one question, why is there so much poop in this? And I was like, okay, well, I'm out. Like, don't need You don't need this in my life whatsoever.
Oh no.
Yeah. Just don't understand why.
Why?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't. Yeah, and like she went on to like, it was a lot. And I was like, okay, this is not me at all. I can't do it. So
You're like, even listening to the review about this is grossing me out. I'm good.
Yeah. Just there's certain things like in horror movies that I just. I don't really particularly like torture porn stuff, like just gratuitous killing for killing's sake. When it's like hyper realistic, like give me a slasher movie any day. I watched a ridiculous slasher movie the other day where the kill was like this dude shoves his hand through somebody's chest from the back, puts a hook on their head from the front, and literally pulls their whole body through the hole in the chest. Like it was the most over the top, ridiculous, impossible thing you've ever seen. Like it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But I was cheering the entire time because I was like, "Oh, this is ridiculous. Like this is impossible."
At that point, you might as well, right? It's like, okay, all right, let's just forget everything about physics and medicine, and let's just enjoy this ridiculous movie.
Yeah. Let's just have some fun.
I love
with
it.
Yeah. I'm just going to bug me that I can't. The Front Room is the Brandy movie with apparently too much poop, so watch out.
The Front Room.
The Front Room, yeah. It's got Brandy's face on the cover, like you can't miss it. It's her movie, so anyway.
Okay, well, thank you for telling me that. I wasn't going to watch it, and I'm not going to watch it now.
And you've got Jazz Fest playing outside your house this weekend?
Blues Fest, yeah.
Blues Fest.
Yeah, so it's actually been a lot of fun. Like every year I'm like, oh my God, Blues Fest is coming up. It's going to be so much fun. And then at like 11 o'clock at night when I'm in bed trying to sleep and Blues Fest is playing, I'm like, oh no, it's Blues Fest again.
Is here. No. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I have friends that live kind of around the area they do Jazz Fest every year. And it's a similar situation where they'll like invite you over and like a party and then like we leave. But they have to stay all night. Yeah. Jazz Fest goes almost all night. So Yeah, luckily here, like they can't go past 11. Like that's the maximum that they can go. Oh, it's noise curfews. Gotcha.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm right next to like an old folks home and whatnot, so like you can't like, you know what I mean? Like it's yeah.
I never thought about that. But it is really cool. Living next to an old folks home probably has some like passive benefits, just in terms of like cops wanting to keep the noise level down. I like that.
Yeah, definitely. Like I'm very, very lucky because I live right next to all of the town's services. Like I'm right next to the library. I'm right next to the community center. I'm right next to the pool. Like I'm right next to everything.
Never move.
Ever move. I really don't want to. I love it there. Like there's the market every Wednesday. Like, you know, it's very, very cool. I like it a lot.
Especially now that you've got
the church is right across the street as well.
Yeah, as we learned last episode, the church is there for your religion.
Right
and you got your brand new air conditioner, right? Like that's awesome.
Yes, that was awesome. I got my brand new air conditioner. It's been really cool. Like,
literally,
I can just like turn it on and it works immediately. I don't need to wait like 24 to 48 hours for it to actually cool my apartment.
Yeah, having living in the South, having like I invest way too much money in ridiculous air conditioning because we just need it. Like you just want it. You gotta have it. So it's
well, that's also the thing. Like I live on the third floor of a 3-story building. Like it gets really hot because heat comes up, right? Mm-hmm. So like I get the heat from all of the apartments downstairs, which is great in the winter. Like I barely heat, but like in the summer, it's awful. Like.
Yeah, it's pretty miserable. We did when Hurricane Delta hit, we did 4 days without power. And at the time I didn't have like a generator to run anything. I had like a little tiny generator that I was keeping like my freezer full of food and my refrigerator cool with.
Exactly.
And my switch charged. I had to get that. I had to make sure my priorities are in order.
I love that. But not the AC.
No
just
air
the
conditioner.
Switch.
Yeah, just fans and Autumn, luckily Autumn was like on a business trip when Delta landed. So she was like, I'm just going to stay up here. And I was like, that's a good idea. You shouldn't come down here. There's nothing for you here. And it was like literally like me and her dad getting in my truck and like cranking the air conditioner, just driving around and seeing stuff just to have air conditioner. Like it was bad.
And how do the dogs deal with that usually?
I mean, Basset hounds are pretty much bumps on a log anyway. So this is just like them being even lazier than they normally are. Like I had all of the windows open in the living room and fans going to try to get like a cross breeze going as much as possible. But you could tell like they were just like laying on the floor, kind of panting a little bit.
Poor babies.
I just try to keep them, throw some ice in the water bowl and everything like that. Just try to keep them cool. But they survived, I guess. I think those two survived. Yeah, pretty sure they did.
If we hear them like losing their minds during the podcast, we know they have survived.
Well, the Penny, the screamer, is curled up in bed with Autumn, who is sleeping in because she is sick.
Oh no! Oh yeah, you guys were sick this week, eh?
Yeah. My voice is a little. I don't know if you can tell. My voice is a little deeper than usual because I think I'm still on the other side of it, but we're getting there.
I think it's a little.
Yeah.
Hello.
I'm not just talking like Shredder because I can. It's just what's happening with my
You're
nose.
taking out your Dean Winchester voice.
Sammy, come here.
Oh my god.
I combine Sammy
do that,
with,
but like with
Vampire
Will.
Bill. Yeah, Will. Tell me, Will.
Tell me, Will.
Any demons in this area? Oh, man,
oh my god.
Dean and Will
That's
hanging
too
out
funny.
would be just an experience. Just two little weirdos just being weird together in the same room.
I feel like they would have trouble communicating because they just would.
Yes.
And they would probably not get each other, Yeah,
I think like in the fic in my mind, like the premise is them like not quite like a there's only one bed at the end situation, but like we have to room with each other for a weekend for like reasons or something, like so they just have to be in this small confined space, so they have to interact with each other. And like of course the first 24 hours they barely speak, and then like they finally like start opening up to each other a little bit, but it's always very, very awkward the entire time. Like, what do you do for a living?
They have fishing in common.
They do have fishing in common. You're right. Yeah, they can bond on some fishing.
I feel like maybe that could be like an opening, like in the fic that you're writing in your mind.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Like...
TikTok told me that creating internal fantasy worlds is a sign of like ADHD or something. And now I'm just afraid to build these fics in my mind because I'm afraid I'm going to get diagnosed with a mental disease of some sort. So.
Never be afraid to build the fics in your mind. That's how I survived my childhood.
Right? Just these complex, internal fantasy structures that I'm living my life through.
I know, right? Oh my god, I get that. I'm running a 5K tomorrow.
You are?
A race.
How is that?
Yeah.
So you've done a 5K run, like just normal, right? Like not in a race, right?
Yeah, well, I did, I've run 5K before, and I also did like a race in April or May or something.
Yeah,
but
okay.
I really wasn't ready to run 5K. Like I had not run 5K before, so like technically I really shouldn't have done that race, but whatever. I just did it because I could. And so I've been like running all summer, and so I'm hoping that like this time it's gonna feel at least easier than it did last time. Because last time I ran the 5K and then I came home and I didn't move for like almost 24 hours.
I was about to say, I remember you posted on Twitter about like just collapsing afterwards. So what's the preparation like for running a 5K? Like, are you doing stuff today to prep for it, or is that like a morning thing right before the race activity?
So I mean, the whole goal is to prep beforehand. Now keep in mind that I was like super out of shape, like, for a while. Like I did yoga last year, but that was pretty much it. And then before that, like I think the last time that I actually like properly exercised was like 2017 or something. So like a while ago. So it took me a while to like just get back to it. And the last week before a race, you're supposed to do what's called a taper. So you do a lot less so that you arrive at your race really fresh and rested. The issue was that I was sick this week as well. So we'll see how it goes. And I've kind of like let go of expectations. I'm like, you know what? Let's just treat it like any other 5K. And if you make the time cutoff, then you make the time cutoff. And if not, then you don't. And it's fine.
This sounds suspiciously like you're letting Jesus take the wheel. Is that?
I know, a little bit. Oh my God. What was that thing that you said to me that I was like, that is so Southern of you?
I don't even know where
it.
that came from. Yeah. You were talking about somebody who couldn't sing. Like she obviously
yes!
she could sing, but she was singing like way out of her register. And I said something about like, people take God's gifts and as an invitation to ask for more. And I don't know where that came from. It's like out of the boundaries of like backwoods Mississippi grandma. Like, thank you, Mama, for probably saying that to me when I was 3.
I was like, that's the most Southern thing I've ever heard you say.
You may not know this, but my dad is my boss. So I work for my dad in the quote unquote family business.
Right.
And we had a business meeting the other day, and we were, without going into a lot of details, the other party of the business thing was like, no, you can't have this. And we were kind of arguing like, no, we should have this.
Right. And
it kind of got to the situation where the other party was like, we see you. We understand that you feel this way. It's not going to happen. And my dad kind of like shrugged and was like, well, you know what they say. It's a poor frog that doesn't croak for its own pond. And the entire place, like there's like 6 people in this meeting in like a hotel like lobby kind of situation, and we all like swiveled our heads with like, what in the fuck did you just say?
I love this so much.
And I had to like repeat it, and I couldn't even help myself. I was like, dude, sometimes you say the country is shit. Like I just couldn't even help myself. And it's a relatively like casual meeting, right? Like it's a business meeting, but like we all know one another and things like that. So like everyone had a good laugh, but like everyone was like, what does that even mean? And I was like, well, yeah, it's a toad that's croaking for his own pond. Like he's speaking up for what he thinks is his own. And I was like, it totally makes sense. And I've known you for 43 years and you've never said it once to me. So this is just a strange experience. Yeah.
I love this so much because it makes so much sense. Like I heard it and I was like, oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's one of those really great phrases that just like as soon as you hear it, you're like, well, of course all of that makes sense. So
yeah, all of that makes sense. Good job, Jeremy's dad.
Good job, Dad. We're gonna work on your parenting skills next, but your idioms are great. 10 out of 10.
Oh, I felt that in my heart. I felt that deep in my chest.
You can make anybody you meet laugh, but you can't make me cry. But you can only make me cry. I'm kidding. I give my dad a lot of shit on podcasts, and he doesn't deserve it at all. But he doesn't listen, so it's never going to get me in trouble. So
yeah, there you go. I feel like it's one of those things where like. Sometimes, like, sometimes it's well deserved. Yes. Parents are like, yeah, I guess so. You're not wrong there.
I have a new coworker, and we were riding together this week, so we're doing like the normal get to know you thing. And he just straight up asked, like, what are your hobbies? And I was like, is this a date? Like, what do we? It's just a weird. I mean, it's a fine question, but it's just a very direct, like, obviously he's scraping the bottom of the barrel to come up with anything to talk to me about. So, like, what are your hobbies, right? And I was like, well, I do a lot of podcasts, and he gets excited. I can tell. He's like, oh, what kind of podcasts do you do? And I'm like, oh, I do stuff about like movies and TV shows and video games. Like we cover a lot of media, like watch along podcast, and I've never seen someone deflate so fast. Like he was just like, oh, and like just it was like the most and I was like, what kind of podcast were you thinking that I did? Like what kind of podcast are there that you thought that you got so excited about it? It was
I was gonna say, like, what was he hoping for?
I don't know. We never we like got interrupted and the conversation never resumed. So I'll have to find out what kind of podcast. Like I don't know if he thought I was like on the Joe Rogan show or something. Like that's maybe something.
So I was going to say, like, do you think that he listens to, like, Joe Rogan and stuff? And he was like, oh, my God, is that what you do?
Yeah. Do you interview, scientists and talk about, frogs or whatever? I don't know what Joe Rogan talks about. I don't know what I watch Joe Rogan.
I don't know either, frankly.
I find that dude repulsive, so I just can't handle
I try not to. The least I know about Joe Rogan, the better my life is. Like,
right?
It's a direct relationship. Direct inverse relationship.
Yeah, it's like using Twitter, right? Like, the less I use Twitter, the better I am. The less I see Joe Rogan's face on my phone, the better I am, period. So.
I agree. It's definitely one of those things. Oh, my God. Ugh.
I guess we should talk about Hannibal, because I have a feeling, as I'm scrolling through and seeing all of the green text in the notes, that this is going to be a long episode. And I'm excited. Okay, yes, I am excited.
Is there that much green text? Yeah, there's a lot of
green
text.
Not at all. Not at all. I was just
did I put... I wrote a lot. You wrote your review today. Yay!
I did. I was doing that while you were teaching me French while talking to your mother on the phone. So.
Oh, yes. My mom is running the 5K race with me, so she's
That's
like,
awesome.
I can't find the start time. I'm like, it's 10:30. I told you this. Like, mother.
Can't find find this start time. Google it. It's easy.
Oh my God. Like, okay, so just last thing before we get going. One thing that I do sometimes with Rochelle is that I'll just text her, Rochelle, my mother. And she's like, what? What did she do? My mother. Like, that's it. That's a complete sentence for us.
Autumn's dad came to the door yesterday. So it's a weird living setup where we converted our garage into an apartment. And then the garage and the house are separated by like a little breezeway area. So he has his own little like space. We have our space. And there's like a mutual space. So he comes over and knocks on the door last night. And I opened the door. And usually he's like, something's wrong. I need some help or whatever. Like, whatever. But now he was like, hey, I just watched a TV show about cancer. And I was like, okay.
Oh no.
And he pulls the neck of his shirt over and he's like, what's this? There's like a spot on his neck. And I'm like, I don't know, dude. I don't think that it's cancer. Like, I don't think that you got cancer the last day. But he's like, well, I've told Autumn about this too. And I'm like, yeah, I can hear her. She's asking me if it's the spot, and I can hear her from the other room asking me. So I said, you go to the doctor soon. We'll get it checked out or cut off, whichever one you want. So it was just really funny. I watched a TV show about cancer. What's this? Really cracked me up. Shout out to Mark if you're listening. He listens to all the podcasts. So.
Oh, yay. All right, I'm ready.
I just finished my coffee, so this will be perfect. I accidentally made my coffee. I got a new fancy coffee pot maker, and it does cold foam. So you can do like iced lattes. And
yes.
I accidentally made cold foam this morning and put it in my drink. And when I picked it up, I was like, why is my espresso hot or cold? Like, why is it freezing cold? And still tasty though.
Oh, yeah, there you go. It's cold espresso.
Exactly.